Phoenix Kawamoto here from the Greater New Paltz Community Partnership. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you to Community Conversations. We have two very special guests with us today. We have Ellen Pendegar, CEO of Ulster County Mental Health Association.
Glad to be here, Phoenix.
Welcome. And Tamara Cooper, who is from Family of Woodstock.
Yes.
Thank you both so much for being
welcome.
part of the show. Our topic today is on suicide prevention, which is an especially important topic. As people know, if you've been watching Community Conversations, you know that over the past year we've been touching on some very important life subjects. And life, as what was said earlier before we started taping, life-preserving and life-affirming.
Yes.
And this particular show is very timely. Although it wasn't planned that way, we actually had planned this show date about 6 to 8 weeks ago. And, you know, it's been a very hot topic, especially with the passing of Robin Williams. But before we kind of use that to launch into our conversation, I just really would love to have both of you speak about the Speak Committee. I was asked to be part of the Ulster County Speak Committee. And many people in the county, I don't think, are aware of the great work that you're doing. And we'll talk more about the resources that's going to bring into New Paltz shortly. But if you could talk a little bit about that, I would really appreciate it.
I'm really happy to have an opportunity to talk about it because speaking is part of our focus, is that directly and openly speaking about suicide is the key to preventing suicide. But the Speak Committee has been in existence for about 10 years. I think Tamara and I were probably one of the original people that were on the group, and so we've been involved with the Speak Committee for about 10 years. If you look at the word speak, the best way to think about it is it's suicide prevention, education, advocacy, and then the K, which I think is really important, is keeping safe. We want to help people who've had thoughts of suicide to find ways to keep themselves safe so that their thoughts don't go to actions. So that's what we've been doing. We think about how we started out and where we've come in 10 years. And I think our sophistication and our knowledge and our experience have really been increased, 10, 100-fold since then. And a lot of the reason that's happened is because Tamara and I have been lucky enough to be trained to do certain trainings around suicide prevention, which we can do in the community. And from there, we are able to reach people and have suicide-safer communities in Ulster County.
Yeah. It's been a process of growth for us as individuals, but also as a county. We are part of a few different coalitions in the state, and we've been able to see how much work we have done as a county, and I feel really proud of that and really proud of our county and the coalition and all the other partners that have allowed us to bring this much awareness to Ulster County around the very important issue of suicide prevention and intervention.
And we don't want to forget to talk about our Speak app somewhere in this thing,
I was just,
so that we
I
have
was
an
just going to
access.
ask you about that.
Right, because we have actually a free downloadable app for both a Droid and an iPhone. That was developed and supported, and I have to give our county executive, Mike Hine, a lot of credit for taking the leadership and promoting that app. So we do have something available, because I think most people have smartphones at this point, so that they actually can have help right there at their fingertips. So.
Yeah, I think, what I wanted to say when you were talking, Tamara, is, after having been in human services, I know you folks, you do such amazing work, and I've always admired your work. And, Ulster County has continued to serve kind of the state in really a wonderful way, in the collaborations, the partnerships that are happening here, the innovation that happens when very creative and, dedicated individuals come together with that dedication for an issue such as suicide prevention or substance abuse, you name it, mental health issues. Can you say a little bit more about the app, as far as the name of give folks some of the information as to how to find out the app, where to find it, how to get it, and what is on the app, so they have a better understanding?
I wanted to also say something about the data that we have gotten about downloads of the app. But Speak Suicide Ulster will get you the downloadable app. So if anybody
iPhone
going
store or
online-
the Google Play, store.
Great.
And we know that as of, I believe, the end of July, there have been approximately 500 downloads in the state of New York, but there have been downloads from all around the world, 25 downloads in Europe, several in the Middle Eastern countries, Africa and South America. So it's not just helping people in Ulster County or New York State, but we're reaching out with this app all across the world. And it really shows how hungry people are for that kind of resource and the power of technology at this point. Some of the things that the app provide are information about various populations. There's a vignette for older Americans or older adults, teens, and there's also a video for people in the military. And there are ways to identify people with thoughts of suicide, and there's a nice little bar on the side that will indicate when people have clicked off the things that they are either recognizing about themselves, because this can be a powerful tool for one to use for oneself, or recognizing in their circles. These are the particular signs or symptoms, and the bar on the side will let them know from serious to take action immediately, and what those different actions can be, the resources that they can reach out for, including a safety plan app that's also available, or where to get help immediately for someone if imminent risk is involved.
Yeah, because I think with Tamara and I think our main focus is that having thoughts of suicide is part of the human condition.
Yeah.
It's been around since human beings have been on this earth. So having thoughts of suicide, we want to get rid of that. It's kind of like in the cultural closet.
Yeah.
That it's one of those things. It's like, let's get this out of the closet.
Yeah.
It can happen depending on where you are in your lifetime and what is happening to you. It doesn't matter what age group you are, doesn't matter where you come economically. It can happen because you're a human being. You can have a lot of things that happen to you. And thoughts of suicide can be a kind of part of the human condition. It can pop up. The important thing is, once it pops up, what do you do about that? And our emphasis is really, once it pops up, it would be helpful to get a safety plan together, because having thoughts is not the issue. It's the actions that can happen once you've had the thoughts. So I think we like to focus the fact that don't worry if thoughts come up. There's something wrong with you. You're weak. How come this is not happening? How come I can't handle this? There's something wrong with me. I shouldn't tell people. We're saying it's important, once you have thoughts of suicide, is really to talk about it to someone, because the emphasis is really, now that you have the thoughts, how do you develop a plan so that those thoughts don't go to actions? So that's been, to me, I think the most important part of my growth in this area is that, it's like I like to say, it's like a diabetic. What does a diabetic do? They check their sugar to make sure that their sugar is in a healthy range. Well, someone who's had thoughts of suicide can kind of gauge themselves. And then if it's not, they can do an intervention. Okay, so I feel a little bit more, my thoughts are a little bit more active today. Okay, so if I talk to this person, I'm going to reach out to that person because that person told me they would help me if I had those thoughts. It's kind of with an adolescent. It's like adolescents who are struggling with a certain subject, like math, right? A lot of people have trouble with math. So they figure out, well, how am I going to handle this? I don't really know how to handle math. So maybe they tell their parents, listen, I'm having trouble with my math. Can we get a tutor? Do I need to spend this much time, here? Do I need to get away from it? Because the more I think about it, the worse it gets. So we can use that kind of same strategies if you have thoughts of suicide. So we want to kind of get it out of the closet so it's not something that people are afraid to talk about, afraid to acknowledge, afraid to get help for. So
I think those are great analogies. One of the things I've been having so many conversations of late with professionals and colleagues of mine and dear friends of mine around a lot of topics, but in particular this one. And we've been talking about how with all of these issues, the thing that feeds them is keeping them in the dark. And that's where the fear grows. That's where the shame hides. That's where
and
all
the isolation
of those,
and being alone is a main even increase in your risk. If you feel alone and you don't have any other resources, then the world doesn't, oh, so what if I'm gone? I'm all alone, nobody, you can see how it can
feeds it.
kind of, escalate that thought, because you feel like we won't have an impact. I know we wanted to talk a little bit. Do you want to talk a little bit about Robin Williams
I think
at this point?
especially
as far
with
as
the
impact?
light, because one of the things that has been, really, I'm a very visual person.
Mm-hmm.
So, when I think of Robin Williams, I think of this, incredible bright light.
Mm-hmm.
And I was meeting with some folks here in town. We're planning a big substance abuse recovery celebration next month, and again, his death is really reverberating in so many different communities. And when we were talking, I said, this bright light has kind of gone out in him, in his physical being, but his death in his, suicide is shining. His bright light is now being reflected on the issue.
Right.
And you're seeing a lot of conversations taking place, and my hope, and I think that's kind of those things where you draw a solace where you can, is what positive things can come from this, knowing that it can also increase risk.
Right.
And so if we could talk some about that, because there is no question that when you drop a rock in the water, the ripples go out. Well, this is like this enormous boulder kind of falling in, and the ripples that are going out, I think, across the world, because he touched so many people.
Right, and I think our concern is that the ripples don't go to other people's increased risk for suicide. We want to use the ripples to use that light to shine on how can we help other people who have thoughts of suicide not have their thoughts go to action. Rob, I could speak. We could hours.
We could do a whole.
We could do a whole
show
thing.
just on
First of all,
that.
he was 63. It's my age group, so it touched me personally. And anytime people die from suicide touches me personally. So I really want to reach out to anybody who was really his family members and the community. I think all of us just to send the condolences. I'm sorry that he had to die this way.
Yeah.
But 63, the 50% increase over the last decade of white, financially upper middle class white men, it's increased the risk for them. So he highlights that risk group. But again, we want to focus away from just certain groups may have thoughts of suicide, because it can happen to anyone. And he's interesting because he impacts every age group.
Yeah.
Because his movies like Mrs. Doubtfire, if you hear an announcer saying, listen, I shared that movie with my children. So his image is going to be alive for a long time. So it's important that we use that to highlight helping people with thoughts of suicide not go to action. But there will be people who will have some increased risk because someone like him, who appears to have everything, appears to have all the resources available, decided to die anyway. So we want to make sure if those people that are watching the show are one of those people, that they reach out for help. But we also want to use that light to shine on how can we help other people not die from what he did die from. So we really want to honor Robin for his being, but not for the way he chose to end his life. And if he had cancer, if he had diabetes, we'd all want to have our resources put so we could get rid of cancer, we could get rid of diabetes. So our hope is that we can find ways to get rid of the suicide, the act of suicide.
Yeah.
And we know that it would be difficult to eradicate suicide from the range of options that we have as humans. However, we do want to reduce the amount of people who turn those thoughts into action and provide help when we can. One important thing to concentrate on now is safe messaging. As we talk about his death by suicide, we need to also make sure that people have the resources to reach out to if they themselves are at risk for turning thoughts of suicide into suicidal actions. And we have two examples. One is when Marilyn Monroe died. The way in which the media handled that event increased suicide over the next 30 days. When Kurt Cobain died by suicide, the way in which Courtney Love and Kurt Cobain's mother talked about it in the media, it did not have that same correlation in suicide in the United States. And they came on very quickly and said this was a senseless and untimely death, and these are the resources people need in order to reach out if they are thinking about dying by suicide. And we need to be very cognizant of that at this point too. We really want to make sure that when we're talking about this, we're also giving the resources. Local resources, 338-2370 is Ulster County's suicide hotline.
Could you say that again?
338-2370.
Great.
And 1-800-273-TALK, which is 8255. And again, it goes back to our emphasis on how necessary it is to talk to somebody about thoughts of suicide. We know that, as Ellen just said, keeping death alive in that moment in our conversation is what we have found to be helpful. People need to talk about wanting to die. Because that's what's up for them. That's what's present. That's what's alive in the moment. If you can grasp that aliveness and talk about wanting to die, the part of the person that still wants to live has the opportunity to come to the fore. So anytime we, again, try to hide it, put it in a closet, feel it stigmatized or embarrassed or humiliated by it, we're adding to that possibility that the thoughts will turn into action.
Right, and the isolation. And the other thing is, it's beyond just a phone call too. So we also want to let people know that directing them to the phone is very important, but it's not just, that's just one piece. You know, that's just one piece. And anytime a person has thoughts of suicide, you know, it's important to consider the whole. And there are going to be people, and we know people, who deal with this issue on a daily basis. That are high risk and have been struggling with it for years and years and years. So that's there's a group of people like that. So anytime someone like Robin Williams dies, it could possibly say, you know, why am I struggling? You know, but it could reverse. Like you said, you saw some people posting said, well, I'm going to honor him.
I'm going to honor him by not giving in, and I'm going to make it. And that was very hopeful because I was very concerned, you know, and this is not my field of expertise. Of course, I have some, you know, education and training, but, you know, when I, you know, started looking at some of the comments online and so forth, I was kind of trying to get a pulse as, okay, how is this reverberating among those with thoughts of suicide? And you know, yes, I didn't do an exhaustive research, but, you know, my preliminary looking, I saw so many. By far, there was only one comment of a person who had said that they admired that he was now free, and even in that person had so many responses made to them to offer them help and hope, and it was just like, okay, good. Let's continue to see really positive things, and I think, you know, it's really important. You know, when you talk about keeping it alive and keeping, you know, kind of that, you know, touch, you know, touching in, you know, and so many times you'll hear people say, well, I didn't want to put ideas in their head. Right. You know, I didn't, you know, if I talk about it, maybe they weren't thinking of it, and now they're going to think about it.
That's right.
And that, right, but I mean, so I think that we on the prevention side have a lot of work to do in dispelling some of those myths.
Right, absolutely.
If we talk about it, you know, you're gonna now they are gonna do it.
Well, the opposite is really true. Most people, because of the way the stigma, our cultural closet, they can't talk about it. So having the opportunity to have someone ask them, it's like, oh my goodness, someone finally gave me an opportunity to say yes. So that's what we like to emphasize, is that people want to have people in the community able to find a way to ask them directly if they're thinking about suicide, which we'll talk a little bit about the training that that's going to be coming up in New Paltz, where we actually can help people to learn the steps about how you do that. The other thing with Robin Williams, go back, there's a couple of things. First of all, we know that he had a lifelong struggle with a mental health problem, mental illness. Bipolar, probably, people have been emphasizing that he's had depression. If you've seen him over the years, it seems like it's possible that he had bipolar. So he had some mental health, mental illnesses, and it can increase the risk. I mean, can increase the risk. having thoughts of suicide. He also had alcohol and substance abuse issues. So this poor man had so many struggles. But the important thing is to realize that not everybody that's depressed thinks about suicide, and not everyone who thinks about suicide is depressed. But they do. He did have a lot of issues there. And when we talk about the alcohol or substance abuse, the important thing is to realize, and Phoenix, you know more,
Yeah.
I'm going to turn to your expertise, and you can talk a little bit before, because often people seek that as a way to help themselves. But some of those substances can also,
They exacerbate it.
can, the impulsivity,
Raises impulsivity and lowers inhibition.
Right.
And we know that approximately 40% of autopsies done on people who have suicided have heightened levels of alcohol in the system.
Yeah.
That's 40%. That's a high number of
huge.
people who
Yeah.
are using substances with those co-occurring raising of impulsivity and lowering of inhibition. So it's a big factor
it's a
for
big
us to
factor.
consider as well. But again, we can't overemphasize the fact that any of us can be
Right.
at risk
And it's
of
so-
thoughts of suicide based on challenges, either internal challenges, biochemical stressors, or external challenges.
Right.
And we are a country that's going through a lot of challenges right now.
Yes.
We've seen the rate of death by suicide increase.
And it is complicated. There's no way that we'll ever know what led him,
Yeah.
Robin,
Oh,
to
right.
that
Yeah.
moment
Yeah.
to do it. The other thing I get a little bit concerned about, and I don't know if anyone's going to talk about it, is that he could have been actively in treatment. And and when we try to
Yeah.
treat people with depression, bipolar, the medications, we're not always sure how it's going to interact in someone's body. So you can't just say, okay, well, you called the hotline, so he'll be better. I gave him prescribed medications, because sometimes the medications for certain individuals can increase a risk. So we have to think about, he may have been actively, trying to help himself stay alive, but some of, like you said, the biochemistries. So it's not just a simple answer to say, take a pill, you'll be better. You need, people need to monitor, how is that medication helping a person, and that person needs to know that you started a medication and a week later you may feel a little bit more suicidal. Well, it might not be your problem. So that's why you have to be open to the fact that the medications itself could have done it. But I think we often think once we have suicide, there's something wrong in us. There's something going on in us that's causing it, when it could be an external cause.
Right.
So I don't know if that'll ever come up, but we need to be open to the possibility that treatment and help, just like alcohol. I'm sure people will take alcohol thinking they're helping themselves,
Right.
and that we need to get that education out that, anytime your thoughts kind of escalate, let's look at everything that's going on with you so that we can, eliminate it.
Yeah.
Right? Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Absolutely.
We're very complex beings. And
Right.
the challenge is that
We are.
we live in a world that we try to simplify, because
I-
we so want to make a difference, and we want to find the right thing to do, and so we try to put things in their neat little boxes and go, okay, so this works. We know this works. Well, yeah, it works with this kind of person, and so it's very frustrating, because we want results and we want to prevent so much, but there are so many mitigating factors,
Yes.
and
So complicated.
and that's where it is a big struggle. Now, I am very excited, and I really would like to spend. We have a few minutes
Yeah.
left, talking about the training that's coming up. We have a Safe Talk training Sunday, October 5th, 2 to 5 p.m. at the Lutheran Redeemer Church. Limited seating, so we're going to ask folks to contact me to register. But
And we'll do more trainings.
well,
We have to.
yeah.
If we get more people, we'll
that's
set
the
up other
first
training.
one, but and we're so excited to have this here, and the resources that are available to us through Speak. Can you say a few things about what people can count on walking out with this training? Why it's so valuable? Because I really want to end on the hope.
Good.
And because there's a tremendous amount of hope, and there's a tremendous amount of help. But if people don't know how to access it, it's just hanging out there. So not being used.
I want to just mention 3 attitudes that we will also emphasize when we do the Safe Talk training. That is to be accepting of the fact that humans come to this point. They have thoughts of suicide under duress. And our acceptance of that can be a huge attitudinal shift. to be calm in the face of asking someone openly and directly, which we will practice in the Safe Talk training, and it's an excellent part of the training, to be calm and to be confident that there are ways to help. Just these three attitudes, acceptance, calmness, and confidence, can lead to amazing results when we ask openly and directly about thoughts of suicide. So we'll talk in the training, we talk a lot about what possible scenarios there might be, what might occur, what myths we have to challenge, including I will place it in someone's head if I ask openly and directly about it. And we'll talk about all the other kinds of myths that we're kind of steeped in like a tea bag in the United States. And that kind of embedding of unconscious or conscious ways of thinking about suicide takes practice to get yourself out from under and to be clear and calm and confident that help is available, hope is available. These are some of the things that people will take away from this training. The Suicide Prevention Center of New York, whose website is preventsuicideny.org, has several different programs that they can refer people to. Also a youth prevention specialist, and I know that parents are going to need additional resources for working with young people. They've done a study recently on the Safe Talk training and have shown that school systems and other youth organizations that have had the Safe Talk training, which is the 3-hour training, have increased their ability to identify young people with thoughts of suicide, and in addition have been able to bridge them to resources and then have the feedback that the young people have in fact been able to engage with those resources. So just this 3-hour training has had an impact in the state of New York that's palpable. So that's one thing I want to emphasize about Safe Talk. It's a 3-hour commitment, and it has increased safety among the youth population.
Yeah, it stands for suicide, SAFE says suicide alert for everyone. And talking, what we've said. You know, we need to start talking openly and directly about suicide. So we give very concrete steps to teach people how to become suicide alert. The important thing I say for anyone is that if you notice someone that you care about who's changing, their behavior is changing, even in a positive or a negative or positive way, that it could be an invitation to ask about suicide. So. That's what I said. So I agree with Tamara. I love the training. It's 3 hours. I think it's very effective. And I think people walk away with real skills about knowing what they can do and how to help a person keep themselves safe.
Wonderful. Well, we are wrapping this conversation up. Again, I want to thank you both, not just for being on the show, but really for the amazing work that you do. For
Wow,
so
vice
many
versa.
People.
Vice versa.
But I you know,
we wouldn't be here
really
in this moment if it wasn't for you.
I really admire the work that you do, and I thank you so much. I look forward to our continued work together. I also want to really recognize the members of the faith community here locally who are really working together with us on this. The Lutheran Redeemer Church is providing their space for this training. St. Andrew's Episcopal Church, their congregation is working together to provide refreshments, and we have a number of other faith community groups who really are also recognizing the need and wanting to assist in whatever ways that they can. This is a wonderful training. I look forward to going through this training myself and bringing these resources forward. So thank you all. Please, if you need more information, please look for Greater New Paltz Community Partnership online, GNPCP.org. You can always give me a call at 845-419-3678. Take good care and be well. Bye-bye.